Well, hi. Stephen Hobbs here from the Wealth Movement. Questions for me are coming thick and fast. It's amazing when you put out some videos allowing people to get to know a little bit about who you are and what you're up to, and they want to know just a little bit more. So someone asked, what am I really good at? And I thought, wow, that's a great question because I put in a few years now. I've done lots of different things, a lot of different places around the world. And I had to sort of think through it. I sort of jokingly thought, well, maybe it's I'm really good at growing a big white beard now. I wouldn't quite go that far. What about dog walking? I seem to do a lot of it at the moment. Am I good at that? Yeah, I'm okay at it. It's okay. But I went back into things that I've done from a paid work perspective. I went back into those experiences. And I found something I call the Wiggly-T question. It's a way in which to take a look at issues and figure out the initiatives that go with it. It's framed by something called forced field analysis by Kurt Lewin. He was a chap who was doing a lot of group work back in the 1940s. And I met one of my mentors who shared with me what he called trace. And I said, this is really great. I think it can be used in a lot of different ways. And he said, yeah, I'm using it with organizations from an organization culture point of view. And I went, oh, that's great because I'm doing a lot of teamwork and group work and helping groups and teams to become better within the organization of work. So we got together and did a number of different projects. Unfortunately, he transitioned way too quick. I would have enjoyed having him around a lot more. However, I was able to purchase that Wiggly-T, that trace, from his estate. And what I've done is I've improved upon it. So I thought I would just give you a basic explanation of it so that maybe it might be something that helps you. And one of the words that's really important is helps. Another word is hindrances. And it's really based on one question. So it's to do with something like about life or about the organizational work, organization of a team, to create a legacy project, to be able to figure out what you want to do with your garden in your backyard, what you want to do for a vacation. It can be used in a lot of different ways. And the initial question is, what is hindering and helping you with whatever topic it might be? So let me use a team, for example. So what's helping and hindering you with the organization of your team, the getting the team managed and led? And what I would do is be asking a group of people who are that group or team for their answers. And I would get them to write them individual responses to one card. So you would have a series of hinder cards and a series of help cards. Now, I'm going to say to you right now, you could do this with a single person. I've used this in coaching and in mentoring as well. But I'm going to explain it through this team group kind of concept at this point in time. But again, you can adopt it, adapt it for working with even yourself. I've used it with myself. I have to keep remembering I actually use my own tools. So in asking that question and collecting those cards, so I get a series of cards. So on my left side in front of me are the hinders, and on my right side of me in front of me are my helps. And that's really great because I can take a look at it just from a very high level. Is there more hinder cards or help cards? Is there more help cards than hinder cards? Are they about the same? Because that gives me a bit of a sense of what's taking place. If I've got more hinder cards, then there must be something that is sort of reining me back, pulling me back, right? Or pushing me back, whatever it might be. If I have a lot more help cards, then there means there's a lot of things that are going quite well. And what can I do to work with those? Now, so that's one level. The next level I go into is I say to everyone, okay, from a hinder point of view, what are your weaknesses and what are your vulnerables? In other words, weaknesses, they're always around. They're always holding you back. The vulnerables, sometimes they're holding you back, sometimes they're not. Yet you want to know what is, from a hindering point of view, what are the weaknesses and what are the vulnerables. On the help side, what you want to do is you want to figure out what are the strengths and what are the potentials. So the strengths are, they are really helping you to do what it is that you're doing. The potentials, they're there sometimes, but not always. They could still use a little bit of refinement. And that's what you've got now, is you've got your two sides, your left side as weaknesses and vulnerables, and on your right side, you've got your strengths and your potentials. So if you look at it, you start to then see another pattern, okay? There's a lot of weaknesses, right, that are really taking over everything. Then you know that you're leaning very much to the left, and that is a place in my world where there's a lot of hinders. Now, if you've got a lot of strengths, then the opposite's in play, is that you've got a lot of helps, that they're really supporting you in what it is that you do. Now, there's a math equation that you can create here around them, but I'll leave that for another day. This is just to be able to observe the patterns of the cards themselves. Now, what I say to people, okay, I asked you the question, what is hindering and helping you in the development of your team? You're giving all your responses. And I say, okay, if these are the sort of the individual statements about what's going on, if we were to take a look at them and figure out what actions that we could take to be able to deal with these, then there might be initiatives that pop out for you to be able to deal with the issues. So I say to them, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take the strengths, and I'm going to ask you, in what ways, what actions can you take to maintain those strengths? Oh, okay, and people write down the actions. Now, what's happening here is it's often counterintuitive, because what most people do, they'll go to the weaknesses and say, what can we do with the weaknesses? I go, hang on a minute. From an appreciative point of view, go over and take a look at your strengths, ask how to maintain those, because those are what are really working well, and to be able to figure out the actions to keep them moving forward, then you are celebrating the achievements of persons, the accomplishments of the group team. You are celebrating very much maybe the creation of not routines, but more rituals to be able to support those, maintain those strengths. Now, this is where we go next, and it's kind of interesting, as we go to the vulnerables and we say, how do you reduce the vulnerables? Now, the interesting thing about vulnerables is if you just reword them so that they come from a help point of view, and often it's to take the negative aspect of that statement, do a 180-degree sort of flip, you'll turn them into, in a sense, of potentials. You've just reworded. So what actions can you take to move the vulnerables into the world of potentials, and maybe even sometimes strengths? But how do you just flip them? How do you just look at them a little bit differently? From there, once you've done that, then you go to the potentials and you say, how do I convert the potentials into something that would be more of a strength? How can I bring more appreciation to them? How can I shore them up and make sure that they're now there more often? And what that does is it just gives you a sense of, oh, it's a little maybe reworking of things, playing around with things, and you start to find that you can actually just do a little reworking. And often what happens is a lot of the vulnerables that you've reworked, in other words, reduce them over into the potentials, you start to actually find that your potentials that you've got are taking care of those vulnerables, and they're sort of sub-elements of maintain your strengths. That's great, okay? Rather than starting with the weaknesses and try to reframe those, if you go through this notion of strengths, the vulnerables, the potentials, you get a whole completely different story. And what is beautiful about this is that often by doing all of that, when you go to impact your weaknesses, in other words, how do we reframe, rework those weaknesses so that they're not holding you back? Often what you've already done with the strengths to vulnerables to potentials is that you have reworked probably more than you would count of your weaknesses. Isn't that great? So you don't have to pop into the negativity of it, the hindrances, what's holding me back, oh, the anxiety that might go with that, is that you've already taken care of it by doing this other way. Now, what takes place is all of those action outcomes can then be reordered, prioritized, and they form up categories. And from there, you are able to create initiatives that you can take to be able to move whatever it is you're looking for forward, in this case, the group team. So that's just a way in which to do it. Now, what's really beautiful about this is that what you do is you then say, okay, just before I finish off, let me just go back and make sure that if there's anything that's hindering that we may not have picked up, let's deal with it. And is there anything that really helps us? Let's make sure we include it. So you just do one more loop through that just to make sure that you've got everything that you require and request. And request is something that there's a bit of wiggle room. Require is, nope, we need it. We got to get it in here and get it going. So I am really good at facilitating that kind of tool, technique, some might call it a technology, in finding a way in which to dynamically balance off this sort of storyline that's in our head of hinder and help and how to bring them together, weave them together, and find a way in which to bring them to light and to the path that you want and need. In other words, how do you take your issues and turn them into initiatives? I'm hoping that gives you a bit of a sense of what I'm good at from that Wiggly-T, used to be called trace. In the work world, I call it TRIP is. Your TRIP is about, and that's an acronym. But let's just leave it at that sort of thought of, oh, the TRIP is about, I'm working with organizations, groups, teams, the TRIP is about. Again, you can use it personally, and you can say, well, what's the TRIP? Well, where am I going? What path am I following? And you can use this tool, this technique, this technology to be able to assist you. So I thought that that would be what I would share in response to that question. There's going to be a couple more coming in here. I think what I'll do is I'll shoot another couple of live videos just to sort of answer them as a way to get to know me from a website point of view, the About page on the website. But also it's good fun for me is that I get to practice a little bit. Also, I get to know you, and the comments that are receiving, they're always great to be able to catch, oh, I really like that, or, may I make a suggestion? And I go, sure, thanks, I appreciate it. I always appreciate feed forward. And I'll always take that, and I always take it into consideration, reflect in, and reflect on that. So with that, I think I'm going to call this video, and I'm going to wish you the best and offer take care.